Have you ever been in communication with a company and all of a sudden they ghosted you? Whether it be for a collaboration or a sponsorship, we all will experience at some point or another a communication with a company that all of a sudden just stops communicating with you. So, what do you do? How do you deal with this? When do you reach out? How often do you reach out? Let me break all of this down. As somebody who has been doing brand deals and sponsorships and collaborations for many, many years, there are a couple of things you need to know in order to take best steps and to move forward with this to hopefully make that collaboration continue to happen. And we'll talk a little bit about when to know when to let go as well. So here's the deal. When it comes to them pitching you to hire you, so they're pitching hiring you, how long do you wait before you actually reach out to them? So in this scenario, if we have had a company reach out to us and say, we want to work with you, and you've responded to them, how long do you wait to then reach back out to them? Well, if you don't hear anything back right away, usually you're going to want to wait a day or two and you're going to reach out again. You could wait up to a week. I would not wait longer than a week. If they're not going to respond to you, it's probably not a company you want to work with if it's happening right off the bat. Now, I've had a number of people who were on the lower end side who wanted me to publicly promote their products and services, but they weren't a very well-established brand, and they were just kind of looking for that low-hanging fruit. Some of them have taken up to a month or two to respond to a simple email that they initiated. When that happens, I choose not to work with those companies because they clearly don't want to take it seriously. Now, if you have been in communication with them and they were the ones that pitched you, I usually give it about a week to hear back from them, and if I don't hear back from them, I will ping them one more time. After that, I typically let it go, because if they are not going to take the initiative to do this, they're probably also not going to take the initiative to get you content in a timely fashion, to get you paid in a timely fashion, and it's just not worth the hassle at that point. But what happens if they've already hired you? So let's say you've had the conversation and you've decided on the terms, you've signed the contract, and now you're in communication with them. What do you do if all of a sudden they stop responding to you? This happened to me not too long ago. So this was actually a very recent thing that happened to me with a very big brand. We had been in a lot of communication and they just all of a sudden stopped responding and not giving me things on time. That particular company ended up missing their own deadlines by a quite significant amount of time. They had to change a lot of things. It just wasn't an overall good project for me, and I won't work with that company again in the future because it just didn't make sense while they were doing it in the moment. Now, if they've already hired you and contracts have been signed and they're not reaching out, it's okay to reach out a little bit more. Usually I'll give them a couple of days to a week. If after a week I do not hear back from them and I have sent out a communication to them, then I'll start messaging them a little more frequently, every other day or so. That way they know I'm here, I'm trying, I am making this effort. You're the one that's holding up this entire process. And if you were smart enough to negotiate things in your contract, and I hope that you were, you will be able to then say, okay, there's some late fees that you're going to start incurring if you do not get me this information in time so that we can make these deadlines. Or if they are now pushing things back and you have a rush, you can add that rush fee in. Now, obviously, that's not going to work if you are working with some of the brand deal companies out there, some of those influencer websites. Those are already predetermined inside of the contract, and there's not a lot you can do, which is why I don't work with those things very often. And that is what, in fact, burned me this particular time. So once they've already hired you, give them a week to get back to you. And if after that week you do not hear back from them, then it's okay to start messaging them more frequently just to make sure you're getting everything done in a timely fashion, and so that you have that proof that you've actually done your side of whatever it is that you're working on. And do this all through email. There will be a lot of people who try to direct message you, and that's just not going to stick, especially if you have to, heaven forbid, take this to a court of law. You're going to need that email proof. So make sure you're emailing back and forth whenever possible. The caveat to that, of course, is the influencer websites. Those are not going to work quite the way that the rest of it does, but it should be fairly binding because it was done through that website. And if you are working through a third party like an influencer website or one of those influencer websites, you should be able to contact them and say, hey, listen, they're not responding. What do we do? And get them involved as oversight as well. Okay, but what happens when you pitch them and then they said yes, and then they ghost you? So at that point, you've gone to a company and said, I would love to work with you. Here's what I'm thinking. And they said, yes, this is how we want to work with you. You have made the deal official. And now all of a sudden, we are getting ghosted a little bit. It's a little bit different than if they reached out to you. I would say you can work a little bit harder on this one. If they've reached out to you, like in our last example, you can, walk away a little bit easier on that one and feel like it's not necessarily something you have to put as much time and effort into. When it comes to you starting the process here, I do put a little more effort into it, and I am a little more lenient in how long I'm waiting. So if they started the process, I expect them to be super professional about this. If I started the process, I still expect them to be very professional about this, but maybe they weren't ready, or maybe they didn't have the right people in place to deal with this. So I give them a little more grace when it comes to waiting for responses. Is it effective? Is it helpful? No. But is it something I am going to be a little bit less in their face about? Yes. So I will give them a little bit more time. So if I don't hear from them within a week, I will message them back. I'll get that email into them, and then I'll give them maybe another week before I tap them back in. Whereas in the previous example, I was in their space every other day to make sure I was getting things that I needed done. So this one, because I was the one who initiated it, I would be a little less aggressive about getting them to respond to me, because maybe it just wasn't within their bandwidth and they're doing the best that they can. I'm giving them a little grace and mercy when it comes to this, but honestly, there's only so long that you can be waiting. Now, what happens when you pitch them and they just never responded? Should you reach back out to them? Yes, and maybe no. If you've emailed them and you've reached out to a company and said, I want to do this collaboration with you, or I want to do this brand deal with you, here's what I'm thinking, and they don't respond, sometimes that is a rejection. Sometimes that means they don't want to do it. And sometimes it means your email didn't get through to them. I have a lot of people who don't get my emails or take a month or more to get back to me. So I typically wait, in this case, about a month, unless there's some kind of time sensitive thing with it. I typically give them a month just in case they're busy or they didn't have time. I'll reach back out in a month and say, hey, no pressure on this one. I just wanted to make sure that you saw this and the internet didn't eat it. And I will make sure that I forward my initial email to them attached to that email. So I always want to make sure I hit that forward button, send it back to them so they've got that right there that they can see. And then after a few weeks or a month, I will reach back out to them for that. At that point, if they don't respond after that, I typically let it go unless it's really, really important that I reach them for some reason. If it's a company I want to work with in the future, I'll wait a few months and I'll try again with a different pitch. But I am not going to get in their face and get aggressive about this because they didn't respond to me. So I always respond back once, and I forward that email to make sure with a, hey, did you see this? Just making sure this made it to your inbox. No pressure, no rush. But I always try to check in with them just to make sure it wasn't like an internet fluke. After that, that is a sign that they are saying no. So if they have not communicated with you at all, that's pretty much a sign that they do not want to speak to you right now. Now, it doesn't mean you can't reach out to them in the future, but it does mean for now you better be leaving these people alone. So how do you reach back out to companies who are all of a sudden going quiet on you? We talked about this a little bit. You want to make sure that you are hitting the forward button on your emails, and it should always be emails. You want to make sure you're hitting that forward button and having all that information attached. And again, it's going to go back to, hey, just wanted to make sure you saw this. Just want to make sure you didn't miss this. Just want to make sure the internet didn't eat this. I would really love to talk to somebody about this, and end it. Just a sentence or two and get out of the way, because your other email will do the speaking for you. This is literally just bumping it back up to the top of their list. Now, if it is through one of those influencer sites, you can send them another message, but chances are they're probably going to ignore it. So if it's like an influencer site that you've reached out to and you're working through, I wouldn't worry about that too much, because typically that's just a no. So you always want to make sure you have that original email forwarded, because you want to show that you already tried to reach them. And it has the date and the timestamp on there. You're not copy and pasting all this information again. We don't want duplicate emails. We don't want it to look like the first time that we've reached out. We want them to be aware we have reached out before. We've already made this effort, and you are the ones who failed a little bit on this side. So if it's something you do want to do, now you've got all this information. You can do with it what you will, and then you have the choice of reaching back out or ignoring it again. So you want to make sure you've got all that information in there and proven that you've already tried to interact with them before, so it's not a new email, because new emails do what? They take that back seat. They end up on the back burner because it's brand new. So of course they'll have another month to respond to you. So if you're reminding them, hey, I've already done this, they then know that they can make the effort now or lose out on it forever. So how many times should you reach back out to people who you want to work with? We kind of touched on this a little bit, but let me break it down for you one more time. After a set amount of time, whether it is a few weeks or a month, you're going to reach back out one time with a, hey, did you see this? If they haven't responded at all. If you've already been in communication with them and they've dropped off the face of the planet, I would wait a week since your previous email and then reach back out to them. After that point, you can then decide to reach out one more time or not at all again. I typically, if it's something I really want to work with or it's a time sensitive thing, I'll give them one extra follow up. So the original note that they didn't respond to a week later, and then a week to a month later, depending on what it is, I'll reach back out one more time to just triple check to make sure you didn't want to move forward with this. And you want to be very clear and specific about your wording with this one. You're not just checking in at this point. You just want to say, did you decide that this was not for you? Or did you decide that you didn't want to do this? Because that will, prompt people to take that action. There's a lot of philosophy behind that. We could talk about it sometime if you want. But you just want to say, did you decide this is not going to happen? Or did you decide you don't want to do this? That way they will be much more likely to take that action and reach back out to you. So you can email them one time, but no more than 2 times. After that second checking in email, you have officially received your answer, and your answer is that they do not want to work with you at this time. It's time to move on. Now, taking that into consideration, you are going to want to decide if this is a company you want to work with in the future. So maybe they had an issue, maybe something came up, and you want to give them a second chance, and that's fine. Keep it in mind, wait a few months, reach back out, try it again. A few months to a year, and try to get into communication with them again. But if they have gone through the process of communicating with you and then just disappearing and not responding to you, that's super unprofessional. And you have to keep in mind, they're probably not going to continue to respond to you in a timely fashion, or pay you in a timely fashion, or adhere to the contract potentially that they set up. So is this a company that you actually want to work with moving on in the future? Think it through wisely. Put it on a maybe list, a yes list, or a no list, and then move forward from there. And if it is a company you really want to work with, but you had been working with somebody who dropped off the face of the planet, just be mindful of that company. If you see somebody else has taken on the role, maybe it's time to reach back out because it was just one bad apple in the bunch and they didn't do their job, but this new person may do their job. So a no list company doesn't always mean it has to be a no list company. It could change in the future as their employees change as well. If you have questions and comments about any of these things, go ahead and let me know. I've had a lot of so fun experiences in the last couple of weeks with companies who were in heavy negotiations with me about things or doing projects with me that just dropped off the face of the planet. And I would love to share stories, have conversations, and get your questions answered as well. And make sure you stick around because we are doing weekly live streams here on the YouTube channel to answer your questions in real time and dropping daily videos to help you level up on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, live stream, and with the tools and resources you need to save you time and effort on your social media so you can create more profit from your social media while spending less time working on social media so you can get back to running your business and living your best life. I'll see you in the next episode.